I have had an incredible life, and because I didn't have a career or a full-time job, I could do the things that I was interested in doing. And I've always done volunteer work, so I continued to do volunteer work. Probably the biggest job I had was I ran the Symphony Ball in 1967. And that was that took a year of my life. It was a very big deal. And what was so much fun is I met all sorts of people that I wouldn't have met if I hadn't run the Symphony Ball. And I'll tell you one story about that. Hubert Humphrey was the Vice President of the United States, so he came out as the guest of honor for that particular ball. So he is sitting on my right at the dinner table. The head of WAMSO, Betty, and her husband John were there, and of course the Skrovachevskys, he was the conductor. And at one point during the evening, Hubert Humphrey invites me to dance. And I've never danced with the Vice President of the United States before. And I cannot tell you why, but what we were discussing was the merits of fresh versus frozen orange juice. I think I'm dancing with the Vice President of the United States. And luckily, out of the corner of my eye, I see Carl Hensel walking his way towards me, and Carl taps the Vice President on the shoulder and said, "May I please cut in?" Carl said, "I did it because I've never cut in on the Vice President of the United States before." That's my biggest memory of the Symphony Ball. It was very much fun. I taught aerobics at the Marsh for 25 years, both in the studio and in the pool, which I enjoyed doing a lot. I really loved doing that. It was fun. And in that period of time, you had to get certified, and I went to a certification, some hotel in North Carolina, and I had gray hair then, it wasn't white, but most of the aerobic instructors were between 18 and 24. And a lady came up to me and said, "Would you ever be interested in teaching on a cruise ship?" I said, "I certainly would." And she said, "Have you a video?" And I said, "No, but I can get one made." And I got a video made. And for 5 years, I taught on cruise ships, and that really was fun. I got to go for free, and Carl got to go on the cruise for $50 a day. And we started off in Hong Kong. We went from Hong Kong to Singapore on one. We did the Mediterranean. We did the Caribbean. It was just incredible. It was really very, very much fun. I loved doing that a lot. It was nice. Granny Frank's had a tennis court, and we had lunch there every Sunday, and so the grown-ups would play tennis after lunch. And then when the grown-ups got through, the kids got to play. So I started to play tennis when I was 5. Nobody taught me how, but I just saw what other people were doing. I'm sure people taught my brother, who knows? I just remember being with people on the tennis court. And I was age 12 when I went off to Camp Mudjekeewis. And that was the very, very first tennis tournament that I ever played in, at Camp Mudjekeewis. And there was a girl named B.J. Dorman, and she had won the tournament she'd been to camp for many years, and she had won the tennis tournament for many years. So I got to the finals, and I was going to play B.J. Dorman. Well, I'd never been in a tournament before. And I remember not being the least bit nervous. I mean, I think if you've had that experience and grown up with tournaments, you're much more hyper. I was just relaxed and playing tennis. I beat B.J. Dorman. I was 12 years old. And after you won something like that at Mudjekeewis, at lunch, they sang a song to you. When the moon plays peekaboo and the world shines down on you. Well, I was singing the song along with everyone else because I didn't know they were singing it to me for beating B.J. Dorman at tennis. And looking back on my life now at this age, that gave me confidence that nothing else I have ever done has given me confidence. I thought, if I can beat B.J. Dorman at tennis, there isn't anything I can't do. And I remember that very clearly. I remember the court. I remember the entire event thinking, I beat B.J. Dorman. Tennis expanded into a lifelong journey. I married Carl. He was a member of Woodhill, so I started playing in the Woodhill tennis tournament. And I won the Woodhill tennis tournament 5 different times, which I thought was just really, really fun. And I'm very, very smart. I retired from the Woodhill tennis undefeated because either Pam or Heidi Hensel were going to beat me. And I never played in another Woodhill tournament. Skiing was an even bigger part of my life. Carl and I bought a condo in Keystone, Colorado in 1974 and had it for 25 years. So that was just incredible because everyone could come out and ski Keystone. And we used to go out there in the summertime as well, but mainly it was for the skiing. And during that period of time, you, Heidi, and Pam were racing, so Carl and I were very, very involved in the racing world when you were racing. It was just a big part of your life, and as parents of racers know, it's a big part of their lives as well. And when you had graduated and gone on, I thought, well, why don't I race? If you live in Minneapolis and you're skiing at Buck Hill, downhill of which is 323 feet, racing adds something to your life. I get a kick. I like an adrenaline rush, and I think jumping out of an airplane is the biggest adrenaline rush I've ever gotten. It was so wonderful, I've done it twice. And people keep saying, are you going to continue? And the answer is yes. I mean, I love jumping out of an airplane. I think it's just tremendous good fun. And I'd always wanted to know what, driving a dog sled was like. I have a good friend who had a tattoo and suggested that I get one for my birthday. So I did indeed get a tattoo.
For what birthday?
My 68th birthday, and it's right on this right hip. And it is a tattoo of an angel. And the angel kept looking after me when I was ski racing. And I still get a kick today if I'm getting in and out of a bathing suit at the marsh in the ladies' room. You'll hear something. Does that lady have a tattoo on her butt? I laugh. That is my beloved pet, Miss Markie, my favorite kitty cat. I love Miss Markie. Dad did not like cats at all. And when he was in failing health, I asked Pam if I could borrow her cat. And so I had Telemark for a while living here. And then Telemark died after an accident. And I was so upset, I went to the Humane Society and I got Miss Markie. And cats are really, really smart, and she knew exactly how to get to Carl Hensel. And Carl said to me one day, Markie isn't like a cat, Markie's like a dog. Well, Markie's as much like a dog as I am. He just grew to love Markie because she knew exactly how to worm her way right into his heart. He loved Markie. Well, my other good friends, my closest friend here is Topsy, and we've been friends for many, many years as well. And at the Marsh, I'm very, very close to 3 friends. All 4 of us started teaching together at the same time. We call ourselves the Yayas. And I am old enough almost to be their mother. And we've just had an awful lot of fun over the years. I have a great many friends. I'm very, very into relationships. I love my friends. I'm very, very fond of my friends. That's why I like being on Facebook. You keep in touch with people. I graduated in 1948, so that I'm 82 now. And the last time I was sent the list of the graduates of both schools I went to, Baird's and Dobbs, I counted what percentage of my graduating class do you think has an email address? And both schools, it was the same. 25% of us have an email address. So very few of my friends are really technically savvy.
But aren't you glad that you are?
I'm thrilled that I am. I mean, I have relationships with people that I would not have if I weren't have email or Facebook. Especially now that I have great grandchildren. The parents of those great-grandchildren post pictures of those children with a great deal of frequency that I wouldn't see if I weren't on Facebook. So, I mean, it has a lot of advantages to me and no disadvantages. I ran the Bill Blass fashion show. I loved Bill Blass. I just thought his clothes were wonderful, and they wanted to take a picture of me on the steps of the Institute as a press to get people to come to the Bill Blass fashion show. I wear size 16 clothes, and I've worn size 16 clothes all of my grown-up life. And they said to me, "We have a Bill Blass dress for you to wear." I said, "Perfect. What size is it?" They said, "It's a size 12. And I said, "Well, there's only one problem. I'm not a size 12. I got into the size 12 dress. It was a strapless dress. It fit me absolutely perfectly. The back of me, the dress is open by this far. But nobody saw the back. But every time I see that picture, I crack up because I know that I am in a size 12 Bill Blass dress. I needlepointed all of my life, and I started the Needlework Guild of Minnesota as a fundraiser. I'd gone to a needlepoint show in New York City, which was a fundraiser for the blind, and I started the Needlepoint Guild here as a fundraiser for the Minnetonka Art Center. And we had the first needlepoint show at the Minnetonka Art Center, and I loved needlepoint. In 1976, I was invited to have the dining room chairs at the governor's mansion done in needlepoint. So I sent out a letter to everybody in the Needlepoint Guild and said, please to send a sample of your needlepoint 2 by 3 inches or something. Then we will pick. There were 12 chairs, and each chair needed a needlepoint seat and a needlepointed back, so we could have 24 people. The best 24 people whose samples came in got to do either the seat or the back. 23 people passed the test. I did not pass the test, but I was darned if they were going to do it without me, so I did one too. I count now the spouses of my grandchildren, but I started off when everyone was single. I had 9 grandchildren, and I'll start with Devon. Devon is now married to Brandon, and they have a wonderful daughter, Ainsley. And when Devon was 13, I was left some money unexpectedly by an aunt of mine. And I had this sum of money that I hadn't expected, and I said to Carl, I'm going to take Devon to Europe this summer. He said, you're going to do what? I said, she's Scandinavian. We're going to go to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. I had connections in all 3 countries. Our au pair girl was Vivi from Sweden, and on and on. We just had the most fabulous time. I had never spent that much time alone with Devon. I'd certainly seen a lot of her, but I'd never spent a couple of weeks just Devon and me. You build a relationship with that child, and you and she, or you and he, are the only 2 that have had that experience. And you share that experience for the rest of your lives. It changes your relationship. It was just a very, very special adventure to go to Scandinavia. I never thought a thing about it until her younger brother, Carl, said to me, where are you going to take me? And I thought, okay, what do you want to do? He said, I want to go on a canoe trip. I hired, there are companies that run canoe trips. So I joined a company that ran a canoe trip on the Rogue River in Bend, Oregon. And Carl and I went on a 10-day canoe trip on the Rogue River in Bend, Oregon. I mean, it was just amazing. I shared with you earlier how I feel about salmon. We are so far into the wilderness, you just can't believe it. And this company feeds you. And Carl had never cared for fish, but this one particular night, what they fed us was salmon. And he sort of looks at it, and he was hungry. He had been paddling all day long. He loved salmon, and has shared with me that he never has salmon in his grown-up life that he doesn't remember that canoe trip. So, I mean, that's the sort of experience that you have and that you share with a grandchild. So after Carl came Leslie Hensel, and Leslie and I went out to Sun Valley. And what we did, we were in a hot air balloon. We hiked up to the top of Mount Baldy. We went bicycle riding. We went river rafting. We did absolutely everything Sun Valley has to offer in the summertime. It was just an amazing. Every one of these trips has been just amazing. And I hope the grandchildren remember them as fondly as I do. Charlie and I chose to go to Red Lodge, Montana, and he wanted to go fly fishing. So we went to I hired an instructor, and he was taught how to go fly fishing. And I have a lot of friends out there, and so we went and visited my friends. And we were staying at a charming spot that had a little pond where you could fish in front of this inn where we were staying. And on a Sunday morning, there'd been a wedding the night before, and some of the ushers came out to the pond the next morning, and they saw Charlie casting into this pond. And none of these young men had ever done it before. So they're saying to Charlie, "Can you show us how to do it?" So this 13-year-old, I chose 13 because Devin had been 13. So this 13-year-old young man is showing these grown-up ushers how to cast fly fishing. It was a lot of fun. The next trip after that was the only trip that Carl joined us, because at that time, in the state of his health, I couldn't leave Carl alone. So I chose to go to Dorset, Vermont, so Kutch could look after Carl during the day. And Tommy and I went to the Orvis fly fishing school. And that was very special, and he too learned how to fly cast. And then we also spent time with Kutch and her family. And then we went to Saratoga Springs, and Wheelock Whitney had a racehorse racing in the races, so we went to the races there. And we went to see the University of Vermont. So every trip has had its own special, and Tommy and Carl played cribbage every night. It was a very, very special trip. It was a wonderful thing to do. And then we get to Heidi's children, and the next year I took Kelly, and we went to France, and my niece, Nanny Raff, lives in France with her husband and 2 little Chinese daughters. So we did a whole wonderful trip to France, Mont Saint-Michel, Paris. It was just very, very special indeed. And I don't think Kelly had been in Europe before that trip. And after Kelly came Robbie, and Robbie wanted to go to the Galapagos and Machu Picchu. And I had always wanted to go to the Galapagos and Machu Picchu as well. And that was just an incredible trip, and unlike any other trip I've ever taken. And my piece of advice to anyone who hears this tape and might want to go there, make sure you spend a night at Machu Picchu. The tourists are there between 10 and 3. They come up by a bus and then they go back down again. But there is a little hotel at the top. And if you make the right reservations, you can be in that little hotel on the top. And you get up early and see the sunrise come up over Machu Picchu. And that is just unbelievable. I mean, I'll never forget that. That was a very, very special trip. Then comes Pam's daughter, Catherine. And Catherine and I also returned to Paris. And Catherine and I did something that nobody else had done on the trip. After Carl died, he said he'd like some of his ashes put into Lake Zell am See in Austria, where he had first gone as a young child at 8. And so Catherine and I took some of Carl's ashes, and we had lunch with our ski instructor from Zurich and his wife, and the 4 of us went down to the dock and put Carl's ashes. And then we also saw Meta when we were in Vienna. and saw the Aberley family in Salzburg. So that was a very, very special trip to take with Catherine. And the most recent trip and the last trip was with Lucy. And this was 2 years ago when Lucy was 13. And I said to Lucy, where would you like to go? And as you can tell, we've been to Scandinavia, Machu Picchu, you know, all sorts of different wonderful places. Lucy said, Hollywood. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Well, I was mistaken. Hollywood is just as much fun as any of those other places. And through friends, Guy Drake, he introduced us to a couple who were actors, the Mulkeys. And Lucy and I went to Chris Mulkey's play, and through one of the Yaya's sons, we stayed in an incredible hotel on the beach in Santa Monica. And I'd done my homework on the computer, what is there to do in Hollywood? And so we went and did all the fun things that there were to do in Hollywood. It was one of the best trips ever. I mean, it really was very, 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 very special. Why did I pick 13? It just happened with Devon. But what I realized as all of these trips went on, at 13 you could miss an airplane and not fall apart. You could miss a meal. You know, a 10-year-old gets hungry and cranky. A 13-year-old can absorb the vagaries of travel. So I think, I'm just suggesting that I think 13 is a very, very nice age to take kids on a trip. And it was so special, this trip. It was just really, really, it was a wonderful thing to do. As you all know, my name is Marnie, and the grands call me either Marn or Graham. But I have chosen what the great-grands call me, and it's Grand Marnier. And every time they say it, I just crack up. We were talking earlier about ski racing. So from my athletic career, the thing I'm proudest of is having won a gold medal nationally ski racing at Park City, Utah when I was 73. That is the biggest win I have ever had in an athletic way. So that was a great deal of fun.
Woohoo!
And Bodie Miller put the medal around me, and you know, that was a lot of fun. I think what I'd like to be remembered for is my relationship with my grandchildren, and that came about because of these trips. That's the thing. I didn't plan it. It just happened. And I'm so terribly glad that it did happen, because it's changed my relationship with every one of those grandchildren. And I just think that's what I'd like to be remembered for, that I had. Granny Franks was such an influence on my life that I hope Granny Franks thinks, way to go, you do that with your grands. That's probably what I'm proudest of. Well, if I were to be described in one word, I'd use the word enthusiastic. So my advice would be, before you cut something down, learn about it. See what you think about it. And then if you think it's wonderful, I mean, I didn't start ski racing until I was 60. And look how much fun I had ski racing. So have an open mind and just try whatever you think would be interesting to do.
Learning to Facebook at 80.
The reason I got on a computer was because of Devon Hensel. Devon Hensel went off to college, and 2 or 3 weekends into her college career, I thought I'd call her up, give her a phone call and see what was going on. And I called her at about 10:30 on a Saturday morning. Well, you don't call a college freshman at 10:30 on a Saturday morning and expect them to answer the phone. I thought, I'd better get a computer. And look at how much fun I've had on a computer. So I'm just saying, try things. Don't just say no. Try things. That's the way. I don't agree with a lot of my peers, the 75% who are not on a computer. Oh, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do that. I feel like saying, have you ever tried? Have you ever gone to a computer store just to see what it was like? That sort of thing. So that's what I would leave you with. And huge appreciation for the family and the friends that I have had and the life that I have led. Because I've had a very, very unique, very wonderful life. And it continues. That's the way I feel. It's how you feel about your aging. I don't mind being 82. I don't mind celebrating my birthday because I've had 82 incredible years. The older you get, the less you mind talking about the end of your life or what's going to happen, but I'll just share one more story. Lucy Kearney, who is now 15, is my youngest grandchild. And I said to her one day, she and I were alone in the car, I said, you know, Luce, I really don't want to go until you are married and have children. And she looked at me and said, that's a lot of pressure. So I'm just repeating that, Luce. I don't want to go until you're married and have children. And on that note, I'll say au revoir.